There comes a moment in life when you realize that anger isn't a reaction, it's a trap. And the people who master their emotions don't win more fights, they win more freedom. Rockefeller understood this better than anyone. If this already sparked something inside you, like this video and subscribe. Here we talk about truths that change the way you see your own power. Everyone gets angry, but few know how to break free from the emotional chains that keep them reacting to everything and everyone. What if you could navigate conflicts with the same cold clarity that built empires? These 10 laws reveal a path to emotional mastery that transforms chaos into control and noise into silence. John D. Rockefeller didn't become the wealthiest man in history by accident. He understood that true power comes from within, and the most dangerous enemy you can have is your own uncontrolled emotions. While others were losing their minds over petty disputes, Rockefeller was building Standard Oil with surgical precision. His secret wasn't just business acumen, it was emotional intelligence refined to perfection. The first law is the law of inner distance. You stop absorbing what isn't yours. Most people live like emotional sponges, soaking up every slight, every criticism, every perceived attack as if it were their own personal burden. But Rockefeller operated differently. He understood that when someone tries to make you angry, they're actually revealing their own weakness, not exposing yours. Picture this scenario. Someone cuts you off in traffic and you feel that familiar surge of rage building in your chest. Your heart rate spikes, your muscles tense, and suddenly you're consumed by thoughts of what you'd like to say to this person. But what just happened? You gave a complete stranger the power to control your emotional state for the next 20 minutes. They drove away, probably forgot about the entire incident within seconds, while you're still replaying it in your mind. Rockefeller would have observed this situation with detachment. He would have recognized that the other driver's actions had nothing to do with him personally. Maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe they were rushing to the hospital. Maybe they simply didn't see him. The specific reason doesn't matter. What matters is maintaining your inner equilibrium, regardless of external chaos. This brings us to the second law, the law of selective engagement. Not every battle deserves your attention. Rockefeller was famous for picking his battles with extraordinary care. He didn't respond to every critic, didn't engage with every competitor who tried to provoke him, and didn't waste energy on conflicts that wouldn't advance his larger objectives. Think about the last time someone said something that really got under your skin. Maybe it was a coworker making a snide comment, or a family member questioning your choices. Your immediate impulse was probably to defend yourself, to set the record straight, to make sure they understood your perspective. But here's what Rockefeller knew that most people don't. Every time you react emotionally, you're playing by someone else's rules. When you choose not to engage with negativity, you're not being passive. You're being strategic. You're conserving your energy for things that actually matter. You're maintaining your power instead of giving it away to anyone who knows which buttons to push. The third law is the law of hidden intentions. Not every attack is personal. Some are projections, some are tests, and some are traps. Understanding why someone provokes you makes anger unnecessary. This is perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of emotional mastery, because it requires you to become a student of human psychology. When someone lashes out at you, they're usually telling you more about themselves than they are about you. The person who constantly criticizes others is often struggling with their own insecurities. The individual who tries to make you feel small is probably feeling powerless in their own life. The colleague who undermines you in meetings might be threatened by your competence. Rockefeller had an almost supernatural ability to see through people's surface behavior, to understand their underlying motivations. This wasn't cynicism, it was clarity. When you understand that most negative behavior comes from pain, fear, or insecurity, it becomes much easier to respond with compassion rather than anger. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you're in a meeting and a colleague publicly challenges your idea in what feels like an aggressive personal attack. Your first instinct might be to defend yourself or counterattack. But if you pause and consider their motivation, you might realize they're feeling threatened because your idea highlights a flaw in their own approach. Or maybe they're under pressure from their boss and taking it out on you. Or perhaps they genuinely believe they're helping by playing devil's advocate. But they lack the social skills to do it diplomatically. Once you understand the real reason behind their behavior, your anger dissipates. You can respond from a place of wisdom rather than reactivity. You might acknowledge their concerns while standing firm in your conviction. You might even find a way to address their underlying fear or insecurity. The point is, you're now operating from a position of strength rather than defensiveness. The fourth law is the law of quiet authority. The person who keeps calm holds the real control. You don't argue, you don't justify, you don't react. You simply rise above, and people feel it. This is where emotional mastery becomes a form of leadership. There's something magnetic about a person who remains centered in the midst of chaos. While everyone else is losing their composure, raising their voices, and getting caught up in the drama, you become a stabilizing force. People naturally look to you for guidance because you represent what they wish they could be, calm and in control. Rockefeller understood that true authority doesn't come from dominating others through aggression or intimidation. It comes from mastering yourself so completely that others can't help but respect your presence. When you don't react to provocation, you force others to question their own behavior. When you remain calm in the face of criticism, you make the critic look unreasonable by comparison. This doesn't mean you become a doormat or that you never stand up for yourself. It means you choose your responses consciously, rather than reacting unconsciously. You might set a boundary, but you do it from a place of clarity rather than anger. You might disagree with someone, but you do it respectfully rather than defensively. The fifth law is the law of energy preservation. Anger drains. Silence builds. Rockefeller knew that the one who saves emotional energy becomes unstoppable, because they act only with precision, never impulse. This is about understanding that your emotional energy is a finite resource that should be invested wisely. Every time you get angry, you're making a withdrawal from your emotional bank account. You're depleting the very energy you need to make good decisions, solve problems creatively, and maintain healthy relationships. Chronic anger is like having a leak in your gas tank. You might still be able to drive, but you'll never reach your full potential because you're constantly running on fumes. Rockefeller treated his emotional energy like he treated his financial resources, with careful consideration and strategic planning. He knew that staying angry about yesterday's problems would compromise his ability to handle today's opportunities. He understood that holding grudges was like carrying rocks in his backpack while trying to climb a mountain. The sixth law is the law of perspective expansion. When you zoom out, most conflicts become insignificant. Rockefeller had a remarkable ability to see the bigger picture, to put temporary setbacks and interpersonal conflicts in the context of his larger life mission. Think about something that made you absolutely furious 5 years ago. Can you even remember what it was? If you can remember, does it still seem as important now as it did then? Probably not. This is the power of perspective. What feels earth-shattering in the moment often becomes trivial when viewed from a broader time frame. Rockefeller would mentally fast-forward to see how current conflicts would matter in 5, 10, or 20 years. Would this argument with a business partner affect his legacy? Would this criticism from a competitor change the trajectory of his company? Usually, the answer was no. This perspective allowed him to respond proportionally rather than emotionally. The seventh law is the law of emotional aikido. Instead of meeting force with force, you redirect negative energy and use it to your advantage. In martial arts, aikido teaches you to blend with an attacker's energy rather than opposing it directly. You can apply this same principle to emotional conflicts. When someone comes at you with anger or hostility, your natural instinct might be to push back with equal force. But Rockefeller understood that this approach usually escalates conflicts rather than resolving them. Instead, he would acknowledge the other person's concerns, find areas of agreement where possible, and gently redirect the conversation toward solutions. For example, if a competitor accused him of unfair business practices, instead of getting defensive and denying everything, he might say something like, "I can see why you might view it that way. Competition is challenging for everyone. What specific changes would help create a more level playing field?" This approach disarms hostility while keeping the focus on constructive problem-solving. The eighth law is the law of internal validation. Your worth doesn't depend on others' opinions or approval. Rockefeller had such a strong sense of his own values and objectives that external criticism couldn't shake his confidence. This doesn't mean he was arrogant or closed to feedback. It means he had developed an internal compass that guided his decisions regardless of popular opinion. When you base your self-worth on external validation, you become emotionally reactive to every criticism, every slight, every perceived rejection. But when your sense of identity comes from within, from your own values and standards, other people's opinions lose their power to trigger anger or defensiveness. This is particularly challenging in our current social media culture, where we're constantly exposed to others' judgments and where public criticism can feel especially harsh. But the principle remains the same. Your emotional stability cannot depend on everyone liking you or agreeing with you. It has to come from your own clarity about who you are and what you stand for. The ninth law is the law of strategic patience. Revenge is a dish best served never, because success is the ultimate response to those who doubt you. Rockefeller understood that the best way to deal with enemies wasn't to destroy them directly, but to succeed so spectacularly that their criticism became irrelevant. When competitors tried to undermine him, instead of getting into public feuds or engaging in destructive business practices, he would channel that energy into improving his own operations. He would use their attacks as motivation to innovate, to become more efficient, to provide better value to customers. Eventually, his success spoke louder than any argument ever could. This approach requires extraordinary discipline because it goes against our natural desire for immediate vindication. When someone wrongs us, we want them to acknowledge it right away. We want justice served hot and fast. But Rockefeller played a longer game. He understood that sustainable success was more satisfying than temporary victories in petty conflicts. The 10th and final law is the law of conscious response. You always have a choice in how you respond to any situation. This might seem obvious, but most people don't really believe it. They think anger is an automatic response to certain triggers, that they can't help how they feel when someone pushes their buttons. But Rockefeller knew that between stimulus and response, there's always a space. In that space lies your power to choose. You can choose to get angry, or you can choose to remain calm. You can choose to take things personally, or you can choose to maintain perspective. You can choose to react impulsively, or you can choose to respond thoughtfully. This choice-making ability is like a muscle that gets stronger with practice. The more you exercise conscious control over your emotional responses, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, staying calm under pressure becomes your default mode, rather than something you have to work hard to achieve. Now, implementing these laws in real life requires practical strategies. Start small. Don't try to revolutionize your entire emotional landscape overnight. Pick one law that resonates with you and focus on applying it consistently for a week. Maybe it's the law of inner distance. Practice observing your emotional reactions without immediately acting on them. Notice when you're about to absorb someone else's negative energy and consciously choose not to. Or maybe you want to work on the law of hidden intentions. Start paying attention to the underlying motivations behind people's behavior. When someone seems unreasonably angry or critical, ask yourself what pain or fear might be driving their actions. This kind of psychological curiosity often dissolves anger automatically. Keep a simple journal of situations where you successfully applied one of these laws. Write down what happened, how you responded differently than usual, and what the outcome was. This will help you build confidence in your ability to choose your emotional responses rather than being victimized by them. Remember that mastering these laws isn't about becoming emotionally numb or disconnected. It's about developing emotional intelligence and resilience. You'll still feel the full range of human emotions, but you won't be controlled by them. You'll experience anger, but you won't let it make your decisions for you. The goal isn't to never feel angry. The goal is to never let anger diminish your power, compromise your judgment, or damage your relationships unnecessarily. When you achieve this level of emotional mastery, you'll find that people naturally respect you more, trust you more, and want to follow your lead. You'll also discover that life becomes significantly more peaceful and enjoyable when you're not constantly reacting to every perceived slight or frustration. Your energy will be available for creativity, problem-solving, building relationships, and pursuing your larger goals instead of being wasted on conflicts that don't really matter. Rockefeller's approach to emotional mastery wasn't about suppressing feelings or pretending problems don't exist. It was about developing the wisdom to know which battles are worth fighting and the self-control to choose your responses based on your long-term interests rather than momentary emotions. The people who master these laws don't just become more successful in their careers or more effective in their relationships. They become more free. Free from the exhausting cycle of reaction and regret. Free from the need to prove themselves to everyone who challenges them. Free to focus their energy on what truly matters to them. This is the ultimate gift of emotional mastery. Not just success, but freedom. Not just achievement, but peace. Not just power over others, but power over yourself. And in a world where most people are slaves to their emotional reactions, this kind of inner freedom makes you truly unstoppable. Remember, mastering anger isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about mastering yourself. Comment. Control brings clarity, so I know you're here. Like and share if this message resonated with you. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who doesn't react.